You know, I'm sitting here thinking like an average American, and I cannot understand how the other side thinks you're serving the American people by not having people come to work every day. The American people don't understand that. They go to work every day. Why is it that the federal workforce is not required to go to their office and do their jobs? And for them to defend that is really mind-boggling. Mr. O'Malley, you're an ambitious man with a long career in elected and appointed positions. I need one word answers from you. In those positions, who were you accountable to? Constituents, taxpayers, the president, the American people?
The American people, or the people of Baltimore, or the people of Maryland. It's a republic.
Well, that's what we want you to continue to do. But in the November 2024 agreement between SSA and the American Federation of Government Employees that you signed allows 98% of SSA employees to telework. Can you explain how you justified signing the agreement that will result in not even meeting the low bar of 50% that President Biden set out for people to come to work?
The eligibility of telework greatly preceded my arrival at the agency, Congresswoman. In fact, in the second term of President Obama's administration, he asked the agency to become leaders in the federal government in portable workloads. And I think we should all be grateful, because otherwise in the pandemic, those checks would have stopped. What my agreement did was to put into the agreement actually a dialing up of on-site presence.
But
I
you never even met the 50% threshold that President Biden put in place. You never met that.
Well,
and I think that is such a low bar. I just don't think that this agreement that you signed serves the best interest of the taxpayers who pay for the Social Security Administration, or the American people who expect their government to show up and be able to provide good service. So I think it's an abomination that you would sign an agreement to let 98% of the people in the administration stay at home and work.
That's not what I did, Congresswoman.
Well,
that's not what I did. 98% were eligible for telework, but I required all of the headquarters folks and the regionals and the areas to be there 3 days a week. And ever since the pandemic ended, those field offices in each of your districts have been open 5 days a week. Ever since vaccines were available, 5 days a week.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gressler, the federal government's the largest employer in the United States with about 2.2 million civilian employees. Out of this number, how many employees have a telework arrangement and how many are remote workers?
We know that 43% are teleworking. I believe the eligibility is in the high 50s.
In the high 50s. So on a typical day, about what percentage of civilian federal employees show up in their in-person workplace?
That we really don't know, because the way that they're classified and the agencies have been measured.
So we have no way of tracking how many employees are teleworking or working in their offices. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's not true.
Oh, okay. In a small business or in the private sector, there's no way that management could get away with not knowing exactly how many employees are teleworking or working remotely. It's inexcusable that the federal government does not have a reliable way to figure out where its employees are working. Something has to be done. There has to be accountability. Mr. Davis, welcome back to your committee. As the GAO noted in 2023, 17 of 24 major federal agencies' headquarters in the D.C. area were less than 25% occupied. Ordinary Americans, small businesses, and corporate America can't afford to pay for space they barely use, let alone help the federal government pay for its unused space. What are the economic impacts of having so many empty federal office buildings?
Well, you're paying for a service you're not receiving. I mean, very quickly, and if this continues, then you're going to have to downsize. You can't continue on this vein.
And from your perspective, what's the impact of telework and remote work in the D.C. area?
Well, as I've said before, telework can be an important part of delivering service, worker satisfaction, everything else. The point here, though, is it's so overdone in Washington and among federal employees compared to where the private sector has moved and other urban areas are. It's have a devastating economic impact on this region and on the metro system in particular.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I thank our witnesses for being here today. An important topic that you're dealing with. Dr. Cooper, the Parent Plus program has been regarded by many as the most predatory program in the federal student loan portfolio. Like Grad Plus, these loans have origination fees 4 times higher than the Stafford loans provided to students and a 9% interest rate, which is higher than many private student loans today. Moreover, Parent Plus loans have no limit on how much parents can borrow. Can you discuss the harms of Parent Plus as well as who is actually benefiting from these programs?
Thank you, Dr. Foxx. The Parent Plus program is a predatory loan program. There's simply no other way to describe it. As you mentioned, the interest rates exceed 9%, the origination fees exceed 4%, and what's more, 20% of the parents who are getting Parent Plus loans foisted on them by colleges have an expected family contribution of 0, and what that means is that the federal government has determined that those parents can contribute nothing financially to their children's education, yet that same federal government is turning around and handing them an effectively unlimited loan. Now, the ones who really benefit from the Parent Plus program are the colleges. Out of 5,000 colleges in the United States, just 500 of those use more than 80% of Parent Plus loans issued every year.
Let me do a follow-up on it. Last Congress, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle claimed that the reforms included in the College Cost Reduction Act, which sunset the Parent Plus program and reformed undergraduate lending to allow for more flexible borrowing limits, would, quote, cut off access to federal aid for half of students. From your expert perspective, is this actually true?
I think that reflects a misunderstanding of what the College Cost Reduction Act actually does. Only 10% of college students even use Parent Plus dollars, so it's impossible for half of students to be affected by that. And as a matter of fact, the Urban Institute found that over 90% of college students would be unaffected by the limits imposed in the College Cost Reduction Act. Who would be affected are the schools that are simply charging outrageous amounts and forcing the amount onto parents. And I would say not allowing those schools to foist unlimited loans onto parents is a feature, not a bug.
Well, a bit of hyperbole then there, right? Mr. Taylor, I know employers are thinking about student debt of their employees. We've been trying to address that issue here. I find it crazy that we allow people to borrow unlimited amounts through the Plus loan program. And worse, that we allow parents and even grandparents to borrow unlimited amounts when the federal government has determined they have no ability to pay them off, as Dr. Cooper just said. How do you feel about the Plus loan program, and do you think it's fair we lend the money out in this manner?
Dr. Foxx, great to see you. We've been talking about this work a long time when it was at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, because I think the Parent Plus loan, to use the term predatory, as that program currently works, is an understatement. We have seen, I understand access and the importance, particularly in the graduate school, of graduate plus type programs and wanting to help diversify our nation's workforce. The flip side is we know that on the employment side, people show up with $150,000 of debt and an undergraduate degree in art or communications or whatever it is. They simply can't focus on their work because they are working 2 jobs. It's not at all unusual to find someone who is under that kind of debt load from their undergraduate debt load, and my gosh, if they went to go get a master's degree, and those students simply can't perform. So they're working 40 hours with us, 30 hours in the evening with Uber, and then they come back to us and they are not their best. We are therefore not getting the return on our investment. We then fire them, and it's a vicious cycle. So it's not about, on the front end, well-intended, I'm certain, a policy, but in the end, what it has done is made it very difficult for employers to retain high-quality people and to see the productivity and efficiency that we need.
Thank you. Ms. Neely, 2 weeks ago I introduced H.R. 650, the Family Rights and Responsibilities Act. This legislation affirms the fundamental right that parents have to direct the education and upbringing of their children. Before interfering in parental educational choices, this bill requires the federal government to prove a compelling government interest. In your experience, does the Department of Education know a child's needs better than parents do?
Absolutely not. Parents know what's going on. They know what their children's needs are, what their children's education style are. And so to the extent where parents are able to determine an education institution or values that comport with what they want as opposed to what a bureaucrat in Washington wants, I think it's so much the better. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back. First, we'll turn to the fiscal year 2025 budget resolution. The tailored fiscal framework born within this budget resolution makes for what will be one of the most consequential pieces of legislation in modern history, as Chairman Arrington noted during his markup. At this very moment, our nation stands at a fiscal crossroads, one where we are beckoned to answer a simple yet pertinent question: what path will we choose to go down? The answer to that question is clear. We must embark upon a path that restores the fiscal health and vitality of the nation. This budget resolution is the primary vehicle to get us there. It is not lost on me, or frankly anyone on our side of the aisle for that matter, that there will be spurious caricatures and distorted criticism that will be lobbed at this budget resolution. Before that even happens, let's talk about what it really does and how it will work to put the nation back upon a sound footing where it belongs. First, the budget resolution aligns with the American people's mandate from November 5th and delivers upon President Trump's robust America First agenda. It eliminates the possibility of the greatest tax increase in history being levied against every American and their families. It provides ample resources to the military so that the common defense of the nation remains unencumbered. It also allocates the necessary critical resources to the Trump administration so it can further secure the border and reinforce national security. And this budget resolution instructs committees to begin the important work of trimming wasteful programs, right-sizing our fiscal footprint, and putting us on a path to fiscal sanity as opposed to the death march that Democrat control has left us on as it stands. President Trump specifically requested, quote, one big, beautiful bill, end quote, and House Republicans have answered that request with a constructive, full-bodied product. This blueprint is a framework on which Congress can deliver the agenda the American people want and deserve. Despite what my Democrat colleagues are likely to assert, it doesn't contain any specific programmatic assumptions or cuts. Let me repeat that. It does not contain any specific programmatic assumptions or cuts. The committees are left to determine best their priorities when meeting their instructions. In short, beckoning back to my earlier remarks, we are at a crossroads. Do we embrace a pro-growth, pro-America first, pro-taxpayer budget that puts us on a sustainable path, or do we embrace the failed policies of the last 4 years. I say the choice is clear, and we need to get to work. Now we'll turn to our 2 Congressional Review Act resolutions. HJ Res 20 would overturn the Department of Energy's previous rule that would ban certain natural gas water heaters from the marketplace. The department's rule is entirely misguided and acts as a cudgel against consumer choice and would deal a serious blow to seniors and low-income households. Republicans understand that consumer choice is not something to be trifled with. Consumer choice plays an integral role in our domestic marketplace, and it must be respected. HJ Res 35 would overturn the Environmental Protection Agency's previous rule that would impose a significant fee against oil and natural gas facilities if their respective methane emissions exceed specific and entirely arbitrary levels. Nothing about this fee is sensible. It reduces domestic energy production, increases our nation's reliance on foreign energy sources, raises prices, and hamstrings consumers who will ultimately bear the brunt of the cost. Like the water heater rule, this rule should be sent straight to the grave and forgotten about. The nation is locked into a new and better trajectory under the leadership of President Trump and our Republican majorities in the House and Senate. We've been given a mandate to protect consumers, and we have no intention of letting it fall to the wayside. With that, I look forward to today's discussion, and I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. McGovern, for any comments he wishes to make.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and let me welcome our witnesses as well.
Mayor Johnson, in the last 4 years, how much has Chicago spent on care for illegal aliens?
Thank you for that question, Congresswoman. So since 2022, since the governor of Texas began
Just
shipping.
tell me a number. I don't need a speech. Just tell me a number.
So since 2022, since the governor of Texas was shipping individuals to cities across this country, the city's budget, roughly 1% of the city's budget over the course of 4 years.
Mayor Johnston, the same question, and I don't need a speech, just a number.
Thank you, Dr. Congresswoman. Thank you, Congresswoman. It's $79 million over the last 2.5 years.
Mayor Adams, same question. How much has New York spent to care for illegal aliens?
Approximately $6.9 billion went out of our taxpayers' funds.
Mayor Wu, same question. How much has Boston spent to care for illegal aliens in the last 4 years?
We do not ask about immigration status and giving city services and providing that access, so we do not have a number.
Taxpayers have been bearing the brunt of the massive wave of illegal aliens who've entered the United States. The Biden administration seemingly declared taxpayers and hardworking Americans collateral damage in the pursuit of open borders. Again, Mayor Johnson, are NGOs providing services to illegal aliens in Chicago?
In accordance with the Welcoming City Ordinance, our sister agencies or city departments, we do not seek the status of any individual that is seeking service.
Mayor Johnston, are NGOs providing services to illegal aliens in Denver?
Thank you, ma'am. When folks arrive on the streets without food or resources or shelter, we do provide food or shelter regardless of where folks arrive from.
Mayor Adams, same question.
Yes, in combination of city agencies and nonprofits, we responded to the migrant asylum seekers humanitarian crisis that hit our city.
And Mayor Wu, I assume you don't know their status, but do you know if there are NGOs are providing services to people arriving in your city without any kind of documentation?
There are community organizations, many of them in Boston, who seek to serve all of our Boston residents.
Congress must provide oversight and ensure accountability for taxpayer funds going to NGOs. Agents from Customs and Border Protection have been outspoken in opposition to allowing NGOs to assist illegal aliens in subversion of law and order. When asked if NGOs are working at cross purposes to the mission of Border Patrol agents, the chief of the National Border Patrol Council said, quote, "Most definitely, and they should not be allowed, but our government allows it," end quote. NGOs receiving taxpayer funding through grants pay for everything from food, shelter, and transportation to legal services that help the migrants traverse Mexico. That is why I introduced H.R. 245, the Grant Integrity and Border Security Act. This bill would require all NGOs who apply for a federal grant to certify as part of their application that they have not, will not, and are not engaging in acts that violate federal immigration law. If NGOs continue violating our immigration laws, then my bill would ensure that no federal funds can ever go to the violators. It's time to pass this bill, ensure accountability, and secure our cities and the border. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Brown.
More than happy to leave when you're ready to excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Houchin. I don't want to prolong this meeting too much, but I want to associate myself with the comments from Ms. Houchin and from my colleagues who have already spoken. I think fear-mongering is really a tame word to say what has gone on here today from our colleagues across the aisle. It's worse than fear-mongering, and I hope nobody, I'm glad we're not being shown on C-SPAN, because anybody who wants to learn something about civics in this country and the laws in this country sure would get a distorted picture of it. I do want to make one quick sort of affirmation of one thing Ms. Houchin said. When we present facts, we are not lecturing. We are bringing the facts out. And I think that's what we've done. I do want to ask the chairman a question. A lot has been made of the fact that in the Veterans Toxic Exposure Fund, you've mentioned that money for FY26 was not included in this continuing resolution, as evidently it has been in others. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is there any money for FY26 in any of the other line items here?
Boy, you're asking a big question.
It's not
As
typical.
a rule, no, it's unusual when we do these things, but again, certainly not unprecedented. No, by and large, this is money for 25.
Okay.
And that's what we should be putting out in this to be appropriate, correct?
In my view, yes, but look, I also put stock in the argument that my friends have made. There's certain critical services. Usually you like to forward fund so they're not at risk.
Indian Health Services.
We do, well, I worked hard to get that.
I know, but I'm saying, but Indian Health Services is advanced funded. Some other veterans programs are advanced funded. I hear you, but I have to answer it.
And I may be incorrect in this. I think the rest of veterans is forward funded. This is a kind of moving target. It's we're having a hard time getting our hands around exactly how severe this problem is. Did we get a rush of cases that at the beginning, because it's a relatively new benefit? But again, that's an appropriate thing for the Appropriations Department to work for. Look, I voted for the PAC Act, so I certainly want to make sure it's well funded, and we will over the course of our normal deliberations.
And I think, again, it's important to talk about, on March 9th, 2024, President Biden signed into law H.R. 4366, Consolidated Appropriations Act 2024. Then on March 23rd, 2024, another bill signed by the president. And then that got us through December 20th. And then on December 20th, we passed H.R. 10-545 to take us through March. Those were not unlawful things that were done. This has been categorized as an unlawful act by the House of Representatives, by our colleagues. So were all of these continuing resolutions unlawful, Mr. Chairman?
No, they're lawful. They're certainly within the authority of Congress. They're not the preferred method. Preferred method, which I think we all would agree on, is 12 bills done in full on time. Our committee produced that product out of the committee before the August break. And we, I'm not saying we did a great job in the House, but we did a better job in the Senate, which didn't pass a single bill, got them across. So it's something clearly we need to work on, and we ought to think about that. And again, my colleague and I agree on this. I wish we'd gotten this done before President Trump became president. He shouldn't have had to be worried about this. He shouldn't. I mean, we should have been funded through September 30th, but we didn't get that done.
I would like to stay within 5 minutes if I could, and I want to point out that Section 7, let me make sure I'm in the right place, of Article 1, Section 7. This is where the issue of we have the power of the purse comes up all the time. Yes. And I think sometimes people have to be reminded of exactly what this says. It says, all bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. Every bill which should have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it become law, be presented to the President of the United States. So there's misrepresentation of the role of the House in some people wanting to say, we have total control over how the money is spent. That is not true. It's just like every other bill, the bills have to go to the Senate and then be signed by the President. So I want to thank the chairman and the ranking member for being here today, and I yield back my time.
Please read Antonin Scalia on the power of the purse, where it goes. Judge Scalia was not actually a liberal, flaming liberal activist. He opined on this.
We thank the panel for being here, and you're excused.
Thank you. Oh, God. Let's misread the Constitution as well. Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our witnesses for being here today. Ms. Koselleck, the Payment Integrity Information Act codified the Do Not Pay initiative, which provides agencies with access to certain databases that can assist in preventing improper payments, and requires a review of the available databases prior to the release of funds. Despite this requirement, it is unclear that agencies are utilizing the Do Not Pay system. For example, the Department of Transportation Inspector General reported in November 2023 that the agency did not use the Do Not Pay portal in prepayment processes as the law requires. In your opinion, why do agencies not use all the tools at their disposal to prevent improper payments, and do you believe that there are ways to improve the Do Not Pay system?
Thank you. Yes, I think there are ways to improve the Do Not Pay system. As I mentioned, making sure that full death master file is in there and that all relevant data sources are in there is key to making sure that that source of information is as complete and reliable as it can be. A way that to encourage agencies to use it is really to think about how you would do reporting, I think. Right now, agencies kind of report on the back end of what went wrong. Thinking about how you would have agencies report about preventing. So for instance, the Do Not Pay system and Treasury payment integrity tools can flag payments that potentially would have indicators that they may be improper. However, as noted, it really is up to the agencies to make decisions about whether a payment will be made. You could consider having agencies report on when those flags are not upheld. For example, if something is flagged and do not pay, but a payment is made anyway, having agencies track that, identify that, and report back when that is happening would help folks determine if there are instances where the payment should go ahead anyway, or if truly that payment should have been stopped.
Let me follow up with another question for you and Mr. Diefenbach. Once an improper payment is made, what can an agency do to recover the payment, and how much does it cost in human hours and dollars to recoup an improper payment? First, you, Ms. Kozelek.
Sure. There are requirements for agencies to attempt to recover improper payments, and I believe it's up to the agencies to determine when it's cost beneficial to do so. So there can be instances where an agency may determine it is not cost beneficial to pursue all avenues in recovering that. You would hope that agencies would, but I think it's left to their determination to determine when it's cost beneficial.
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. Agencies have a number of options for trying to recover improper payments. There are administrative possibilities, options. The Congress did just pass the Administrative False Claims Act in December, which is a significant new tool for agencies and OIGs to work with jointly that allows agencies to go through a very rigorous process where they can then recover funds and damages in some instances. But to your point, recovering funds through the judicial system, the pay and chase model we have now, is exorbitantly expensive, which is why we and others in this hearing are focused on the prevention piece, because it is very expensive to do any of those recovery actions.
So what investments could agencies take to prevent improper payments? Could investments in artificial intelligence help lower the improper payment rate? What we want to do is not have the payment go out to begin with by using what's available to the agencies now. So I'll start with you, Mr. Diefenbach.
Yes. So technology is part of the solution. Another piece of it is culture, is ownership. And the Inspector General Act was passed in 1978 to create this community of watchdogs to prevent fraud. However, before 1978 and today, the agencies have the primary responsibility to do those things, to resource things properly, to exploit technology, as you just mentioned, and to ensure that they're doing good risk assessments and they're following through on those to make sure they're mitigating the biggest risks in their programs.
Ms. Kozelek, any further comments?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, prevention is really the key in this, and having the right data. So artificial intelligence can be helpful if you have the right data in the system. So we do have recommendations to encourage agencies to collect all the necessary information that is needed, to ensure the databases are complete, that they're accurate. If you're using artificial intelligence and other data mining tools, but you have inaccurate or unreliable data in the systems, that is not going to be very helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last night, the Rules Committee met and produced a rule, H-Res 294, providing for consideration of 4 measures. SJ-Res 18, disapproving of the rules submitted by the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection related to, quote, overdraft lending, very large financial institutions, end quote. SJ-Res 28, disapproving of the rules submitted by the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection relating to, quote, defining larger participants of a market for general use digital consumer payment applications, end quote. H.R. 1526, the No Rogue Rulings Act of 2025, and H.R. 22, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. House Resolution 294 provides for consideration of SJ-Res 18 and SJ-Res 28, both under closed rules, and 1 hour of general debate each, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services or their respective designees, and provides each one motion to commit. The rule further provides for consideration of H.R. 1526, the No Rogue Rulings Act of 2025, under a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the committee on the judiciary or their respective designees, and provides for one motion to recommit. The rule further provides for consideration of H.R. 22, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, under a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the committee on House administration or their respective designees, and provides for one motion to recommit. Finally, the rule provides that House Resolution 293 is hereby adopted and provides that House Resolution 164 is laid on the table. The rule before us today provides Congress with yet another opportunity to stand for consumer choice and business innovation in our nation. It provides an opportunity to defend the integrity of our elections, and it provides for a historic opportunity to rein in rogue judges and return public policy decisions to their rightful branches of government. H.R. 22, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or SAVE Act, would amend the National Voter Registration Act of 1993 to require proof of U.S. citizenship to register an individual to vote in elections for federal office. The only people who should vote in American elections are American citizens. There should be no debate or question about that. The SAVE Act adds additional layers of protection to elections right here in our own country. It's an opportunity worthy of bipartisan support. H.R. 1526, the No Rogue Rulings Act of 2025, would limit the authority of district judges to provide sweeping injunctive relief on a nationwide or exceedingly broad scale. As of late, we have certainly seen a slew of rulings by rogue judges that surpass their own constitutional authority. Americans are rightfully concerned about this very issue. Let me be clear. This is judicial warfare in the flesh. Without question, exceeding constitutional mandates as a matter of judicial philosophy does nothing more than blight justice itself. S.J. Res. 18, a Congressional Review Act resolution, would overturn a midnight rule issued by Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, that undercuts the ability of lower-income Americans to access liquidity. To put it very simply, this CFPB's rule hurts the very consumers that it purports to protect. One of the likely outcomes of this rule being fully implemented would be low-income Americans being expelled from the financial system entirely due to a lack of overdraft protection. It's time that we add this midnight rule to the burn pile. S.J. Res. 28, another Congressional Review Act resolution, would overturn another CFPB rule that unjustly shackles private sector companies that operate within the digital asset marketplace. This rule is billed as a, quote, consumer protection, end quote, mechanism. But what it really does is misclassify an entire segment of digital products with the aim of regulating them straight into the ground. The CFPB overstepped its regulatory authority in its pursuit of subjugating the American economy in the name of consumer protection. This is another misguided rule that we must render null and void. Mr. Speaker, before I reserve, I want to take a moment to recognize the good faith efforts of Speaker Johnson in helping maintain a strong family-centric posture here in the People's House. Leading from the front and building consensus are not always easy endeavors. All of us understand this to be true. However, when done in the right ways and for the right reasons, like what the Speaker has done, we get positive resolutions. It's obvious that we have a critical mass of members on what I consider an existential question for this body, and that the related discharge effort derailed our agenda for a short time. However, we're back at our post, and our objective right here and now is to move forward. At the end of the day, our eyes must remain affixed to our very own North Star. Our North Star is governance, Mr. Speaker. Deviating from governing does not serve the American people, nor does it make good on the mandate they entrusted us with. The compromise agreement of dead pairing that was formulated and led by the Speaker and others is grounded in existing precedents, practices, and ultimately common sense. This is a viable pathway forward that meets two critical imperatives. It allows the clockwork and business of this body to remain unabated while extending due deference to our own majority's own governing principles. It is not the prerogative of this Republican majority now, nor will it ever be, to use tools of the minority to secure legislative victories. Republicans are the ones manning the helm here, and we must act like it. In addition, I'll add that I firmly believe, as do many others, that Speaker Johnson's work in addressing the concerns raised last week and taking sizable steps to further intertwine rock-solid family values into the fabric of this House are very commendable. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves the balance of her time.
This is for being here today. President Raymond, in August 2024, Guanshan Ha, a religion professor at Haverford, wrote on X that, quote, "The state of Israel must be dismantled and the society denazified. Zionism is Nazism, it is fascism. Zionists are racist." Professor Ha also wrote, quote, "The only way to deal with Zionists is to stop talking to them and refuse to let them waste your time. Liberal Zionists in particular." And I learned a new term, reluctant Zionists, and I guess there were plenty of reluctant Nazis too. Perhaps a majority of them were, end quote. Do you believe there's a distinction between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism?
Representative Foxx, first
Just a quick answer. Yes or no?
I want to say that we support all of our Zionist students, staff, and faculty at Haverford, and we are squarely against anti-Semitism.
Do you believe anti-Zionism is any more acceptable than anti-Semitism?
Anti-Semitism is unacceptable. There is no place for it.
How about anti-Zionism?
There is room for criticizing the government of any nation.
Yeah, but the state of Israel has existed for almost 80 years. Under the premise of anti-Zionism, a Jewish state as it exists today shouldn't exist. Is that what you believe, that Israel should not exist?
Pardon me, that is not at all what I said or what I meant here.
Okay, so what are anti-Zionists actually advocating for when the Jewish state has existed for nearly 80 years? 80 decades, excuse me. 8 decades.
I do not support those statements at all.
But that's a professor at your university. On the extreme, this means the genocide of Israelis. At the very least, it reveals national origin discrimination violations if done in programs or activities in higher ed. Dr. Raymond, do you believe that Professor Ha's insistence that Zionists shouldn't be engaged with and that they should be compared to Nazis could be a violation of Department of Education civil rights protections? Yes or no?
We do not tolerate discrimination, harassment, or bias at Haverford College. And
For Dr. Armstrong, according to reports, Cal Poly's history department hosted UC Berkeley professor Usama Makdizi, a self-avowed anti-Zionist. Do you believe anti-Zionism could constitute national origin discrimination? Yes or no?
Yes.
Dr. Manuel, does DePaul University support BDS?
We do not, and we've come out strongly against it, at least in the 2.5 years that I've been there, including a rebuke of a student government
And
resolution.
will you supply that statement to me after this?
I would be happy to.
Dr. Armstrong, does Cal Poly support BDS?
No.
Dr. Manuel, it's my understanding you gave in to some demands made by the student coalition behind DePaul's violent anti-Semitic May 24 encampment, even though the encampment had to be forcibly removed. The encampment coalition demanded that DePaul eliminate, quote, discriminatory study abroad program trips to Israel that propagandize and normalize that occupation, end quote. As you may know, this has been a key goal of anti-Semitic BDS activists at universities across the U.S. In June, DePaul said it agreed to discuss inclusivity with regard to its Israel study abroad program. Does inclusivity mean, what does it mean in this context?
Thank you for the question. The 10 demands that were delivered by the students were rejected, and none of them were adhered to. None of them were agreed to.
Okay, my question is, what does inclusivity mean?
I believe that the program you're talking about, students were concerned that there was a limitation on who could take it based on visas given from Israel. And we still support that program.
Do you commit to continuing the university study abroad program in Israel?
We commit to studying, to continuing all study abroad programs through and compliant with the law.
Do you commit to rejecting changes that demonize or delegitimize Israel?
Yes.
And do you commit to ensuring that the study abroad program affirms the Jewish people's right to self-determination?
Yes, I believe self-determination and the right for Israel to exist is a primary function.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back. Thank my colleagues. As you all know, we came in for a lot of criticism for the Rules Committee meeting at 1 a.m. in the morning, but we needed to do that in order for us to be right here this morning getting this done. And I want to thank the Speaker for all the work that he has done. I've told him I'm going to nominate him for sainthood because he now has done many miracles here as Speaker. But he, working together with President Trump and all of my colleagues, and I want to thank the members of the Rules Committee for their patience and their perseverance. But this is a great morning in America. Again, we are delivering as Republicans for the American people, and we're all going to walk very happily for the next few weeks, especially till we see the next challenge that we have. But this has just been a primer for it, and we're ready for the next ones. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, President Trump.
Jim Jordan, Judiciary Chair.
Dr. Foxx from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here. Mr. Savage, we all know the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has a track record of misusing genetic data, and even the New York Times acknowledged that, quote, China uses genetic tests to track members of the Uyghurs, end quote, who are a politically disfavored minority group. This abuse can surely be perpetrated against any disfavored group whose genetic data is available. How does 23andMe prevent the genetic data, mainly from Americans, controlled by the company, from being used by the CCP or some other malign actor to track or harm Americans?
Congresswoman, you know, 23andMe puts data security and privacy at the top of the forefront of our company. All of our data is secured with top security encryption. We have, security professionals, in place at 23andMe implementing the latest technologies in security. And we've received, 3 ISO certifications for the company in terms of security, cybersecurity, and privacy to make sure that the data of our customers is secure. In addition, after the cybersecurity incident, we made sure that, basically we've implemented 2-factor authentication. We've ensured that customers have reset their passwords, and we make sure that those passwords have not been, basically in compromised databases anywhere to make sure that our customer data is safe.
Mr. Savage, besides the 15 million individuals who have their genetic data stored with the company, family members, by virtue of having a similar genetic makeup to those who took the test, are also potentially at risk if 23andMe's genetic data is exposed or used for nefarious purposes. Is that correct?
If a customer at 23andMe chooses to allow their data to be shared, such as a DNA relatives feature at 23andMe, people relatives could actually, and family members can see that additional data, yes.
Ms. Wojcicki, precisely because of concerns about the genetic information controlled by 23andMe falling into the wrong hands, the Pentagon warned its personnel in 2019 not to use consumer DNA kits. How did 23andMe respond to the Pentagon's warning at that time?
Thank you for that question. I have to say, in all honesty, we were surprised. We had not been contacted. We were surprised. So we're happy to engage around that discussion as to what are the potential concerns, but it was a surprise to us, and we did not get forewarning, and no one engaged afterwards.
So after the warning, did the company change the way it handled or protected consumers' genetic data?
Thank you for that. There were not substantial changes because, as I mentioned, privacy and data security had really been top priority since then. So since the inception of the company. So I would say after that notice and reading about that, it definitely became top of mind, and I think the number one takeaway we had was really there should be an engagement around the understanding of how we actually are making sure that we're securing data and how we're making sure that we're always honoring the customer's privacy. So it was a great opportunity for us to consider engaging. We always are reviewing our systems. We're always looking at sort of the update of what else should we be doing with our security protocols. And so that was the primary takeaway from that.
Do you believe there's anything could have been done to prevent the 2023 breach?
That is I appreciate that question. I'm pretty limited with what I can say specifically around that because of the potential litigation or the ongoing litigation around there. The thing that we always said is that you have to be vigilant on a daily basis. You have to always live in a world of paranoia because you see how many threat actors there are out there, the number of security incidents that are there. So the primary takeaway we always thought is like, what's also the product by design? How are we making sure we're designing the product? So if and when something happens, that we're doing everything we can to protect the privacy of our customers. The database security design has always been really important for us about making sure that if there ever was a threat actor, how are we actually making sure that we're doing everything we can to prevent that? So it was always top of mind for us to think about what those potential risks are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes Ms.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the rule and of the underlying legislation. Yesterday, the Rules Committee met and produced a rule, H.Res. 499, providing for the House's consideration of H.R. 4, the Rescissions Act of 2025. This rule provides for consideration of H.R. 4 under a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour debate equally divided and controlled by the majority leader and minority leader or their respective designees and provides 1 motion to recommit. Additionally, the rule provides that House Resolution 492 is hereby adopted. Before we get into the substance of the bill today, I'd like to clear up any confusion about any remarks I made in the Rules Committee last night. Let me be crystal clear. I encourage all members to support the rule before us today. My comments last night were lacking in context. Democrats made the argument throughout the hearing that this process is somehow another vote on H.R. 1. That is false. The resolution today makes purely technical changes to protect the privilege of the reconciliation bill as it heads to the Senate. It is not a redo or re-litigation of any underlying policy issues in the bill. Let me repeat, there are no policy decisions included in this engrossment correction. That is what the Senate is working through, and I look forward to considering H.R. 1 when the bill returns from the other chamber. Mr. Speaker, House Republicans remain on a positive, forward-moving trajectory in delivering upon the American people's mandate from November. Just a few short weeks ago, we passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. This week, we're taking up a nearly $10 billion rescissions package, and soon we will be moving into the appropriations process. Discretionary waste is about to be put through the congressional shredder. Mr. Speaker, the American people demand that this happens. Now, our colleagues across the aisle will leap to their feet and scream bloody murder about how the waste we're targeting simply doesn't exist and how we're laying siege to everything under the sun. Au contraire, we have the receipts to back everything up. Here's just a small sampling of the mind-boggling discretionary waste that we'll be slashing in foreign funding. $158 million from the Lebanon peacekeeping mission, which has been fraught with waste and abuse, as evidenced by its abject failure to contain Hezbollah. $3 million for an Iraqi Sesame Street. $833,000 for services for, quote, transgender people, sex workers, and their clients and social net workers, end quote, in Nepal, and $500,000 for electric buses in Rwanda. These examples barely skim the surface, Mr. Speaker, and it's really no wonder why Americans are outraged that their tax dollars are being squandered. It's the American people's money. A single dollar of taxpayer money wasted is $1 too many in our view. Then there's NPR. I honestly don't even know where to begin on that one. Even if someone were to accept the premise that we need to finance a public radio outlet, certainly we can all agree that it simply cannot be NPR any longer. NPR's own CEO testified before Congress that she has never seen any political bias at NPR. I don't know what reality she's living in, but it clearly isn't this one. Here's the kicker. NPR does harbor political bias. It took a $1.9 million grant to, quote, improve objectivity and diverse viewpoints, end quote. There's the proof. And it's a concrete example that NPR's CEO was giving false testimony to Congress. You either understand that you're biased and need help, apparently in the form of taxpayer grants, or you haven't witnessed any bias. You can't have it both ways. Then there's PBS. Again, I honestly don't know where to begin. On top of the concrete, statistically proven bias against conservatives, Republicans, and the Trump administration, this is the 21st century. We have Sesame Street now streaming on private services. So the taxpayer is now subsidizing for-profit companies. We've seen private celebrities like Miss Rachel who are engaging in crossovers with Sesame Street, which again leverage taxpayer dollars to concentrate wealth to private individuals. It's clear that we must slash this tranche of wasteful spending and continue down a path to fully restore fiscal sanity in our nation. With that, Mr. Speaker.
The witnesses have requested a 15-minute bathroom break, but before we do that, I'm going to go to Dr. Foxx for 5 minutes of questions. After Dr. Foxx, we'll take a 15-minute break for the witnesses, and then we'll start back with Mr. Kassar. So Chair recognizes Dr. Foxx from North Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Governor Walz, as you're aware, Minnesota saw the largest COVID-19 fraud scheme in the nation. The so-called nonprofit Feeding Our Future falsely claimed to have served 91 million meals to children, for which it received nearly $250 million in federal funds. According to the FBI, the $250 million in federal taxpayer money was, quote, funneled into luxury homes, cars, and lavish lifestyles while families struggled. In March, 2 individuals were convicted in connection with this case, and I understand related investigation continues. The FBI stated that, quote, the egregious fraud uncovered in the Feeding Our Future case represents the blatant betrayal of public trust. The FBI will not allow criminals to rob federal programs and walk away unscathed. We'll expose their schemes, dismantle their networks, and ensure they face the full weight of justice. Do you support the federal government's efforts to bring to justice those who stole federal taxpayer money at the expense of hungry children in your state?
Thank you, Dr. Foxx, wholeheartedly. And this is a great example. When the federal government works with the state, we reported it, they prosecuted them, they are in prison.
So do you support federal efforts to bring to justice those who commit federal crimes in Minnesota?
I most certainly do.
Okay. Does Minnesota honor ICE detainer request?
Congresswoman, thank you for the question. I've been making sure I get my opportunity here. Minnesota follows all federal law. State law requires, and I would say the state law requires all state and county facilities to ask for immigration status when a convicted felon is committed and tells DHS if they're undocumented. All state facilities. DOC calls DHS before a convicted felon leaves prison. We have a controlled handover.
Well, how can we be sure that your state is serious about cooperating with the federal government to enforce our immigration laws?
We do it on a daily basis, Congresswoman. And again, I say this is the floor. Counties can do more, but here's the confusion we have right now. Last week, a list of supposed sanctuary cities or counties were put out. Many of those were counties in Minnesota that had gone above and beyond. Their sheriffs said it put them at risk because they were doing that. They were sharing information and doing what they're supposed to do. It's a coordination issue.
But you said in your answer it's only if they've been convicted of crimes that
or a judicial warrant. Or a judicial warrant. That's correct, after due process has been served.
So that you don't cooperate if they're illegally here and the ICE comes to get them.
If they have gone through the process, Congresswoman, and they have received due process, and ICE's job is to come and get them. It's what I've been saying all day.
But if they're here illegally, then they're here illegally. There's no, they've broken the law already.
Many are here as asylum seekers. They've overstayed a visa.
I have another question to ask you, Governor. As I've said before in this committee, innocent American taxpayers are collateral damage in the Democrats' pursuit of open border policies. Americans pay with their wallets, their safety, and all too often their lives. This is unacceptable. I'm sure you're aware, Governor, that your state has spent hundreds of millions of state taxpayer dollars to address the surge of illegal aliens in Minnesota. Are you also aware of any NGOs operating in your state that provide services to illegal aliens, and have those NGOs received any federal funding?
I can't answer that at this time. I don't have it in front of me.
Well, we have to end the shameful practice of NGOs working against immigration law enforcement efforts. That's why I introduced H.R. 245, the Grant Integrity and Border Security Act, to stop NGOs who work against U.S. laws from receiving a single cent of taxpayer funds. Americans should never tolerate a government that uses their own tax money against them. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Before we recess, recognize the ranking member for UC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to submit an article from the Seattle Times entitled "National Sheriff's Association Head Tears into Fed's Sanctuary List."
Mr. Speaker, the question before the House is, should the House now consider House Resolution 566? Though the resolution waives all points of order against consideration of the motion to concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 1, the Committee on Rules is not aware of any violation of the Unfunded Mandates Reform Act, nor has the Congressional Budget Office identified any violation of the Act. The reason for this motion is plain and obvious. It is not a legitimate attempt to question consideration, but simply a dilatory tactic to further delay consideration of this historic legislation and to give the Democrats more time to mislead Americans. We must dispense with this question of consideration so we can move the process forward and enact the agenda President Trump and the American people have demanded. I reserve my time. New nation. A nation no longer blighted by the cataclysmic failures of the previous administration. A nation primed and ready to enter the golden age. One of the many strong reinforced byproducts of our Republican vision is the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. It is one of the most consequential pieces of legislation that any party has ever passed, and for good reason. The provisions interwoven in this legislation are monumental. They are what the American people voted for in November. Historic tax relief for working families, massive investments to secure our nation's borders, capturing generational savings, slashing waste, fraud, and abuse in government programs so that they may run more efficiently for those who truly need them. Mr. Speaker, I could opine at length about the wins that Republicans have secured in this bill, wins that we've been highlighting to the American people for months. Meanwhile, our Democrat colleagues have resorted to fear-mongering and wailing from their bully pulpits in the hopes of deceiving the American people. For months, we've heard Democrats claim that the sky was falling, that all hope is lost because H.R. 1 will bring about the end times, and a litany of other outlandish and absurd claims. They are so desperate to smear H.R. 1 and deny the American people the policies that the American people overwhelmingly voted for in November. But let's again focus on what this bill accomplishes. It yields the single greatest cut in wasteful government spending in congressional history by slashing far more than $1 trillion of bloat. It preserves the greatest battle-tested set of tax cuts for working families that our nation has ever seen or our economy has ever realized. It doubles down on the border priorities of the most successful enforcement efforts by a president in our nation's history. It realigns our economy in defense of American workers, American energy, American businesses, and American job creators to unleash the engines of our economy, raise the tide of our economic standards, and bring a new definition of American greatness to the world. Perhaps the reason why Democrats are so desperate to smear this legislation is because they are caught in their own self-inflicted malaise of denial. Perhaps they still can't accept that Americans chose Republicans to lead the nation instead of them. That said, Mr. Speaker, Republicans are not distracted by that fear-mongering and doomsaying of those who want H.R. 1 to fail. The facts are on our side, and we've been cutting through the noise by bringing those facts to the American people for months. So that the record is clear, a vote against this legislation is a vote to green light the largest tax increase in American history being levied against everyday men and women. Decimation of millions of jobs across America. Kneecap the capabilities and readiness of the nation's military. This is not fear-mongering like what our colleagues across the aisle have been engaging in. These are just facts. Mr. Speaker, the pathway forward is crystal clear. The House must pass this rule and pass the Senate amendment to H.R. 1 so that more wins can be delivered to the American people. The American people deserve to keep winning, and to deny them that opportunity is a flagrant disservice. This legislation is the embodiment of the America First agenda, and we would all do well to remember that. Failure at this critical juncture is not an option. This clock is ticking. The President and the American people are waiting. I reserve.
Massachusetts reserves. The gentlelady from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here we go again. Not talking about the subject at hand, but trying to distract people. Same old tired song and dance. Our friends revert to demonizing and misrepresenting the big, beautiful bill. They say you can't make this stuff up, but that's what they do. We're having one success after another, and it's driving our friends across the aisle to distraction. When they had full control of the levers of power just a few years ago, they expanded the federal government with an unprecedented $11 trillion in spending, $6 trillion of which has been added to the national debt. But what's most revealing is their refusal to articulate a single program, a single outlay, or a single area of federal spending they want to reduce on behalf of taxpayers. They want every single dime of taxpayer money. And they don't like the historic cutting of $1.6 trillion in waste, fraud, and abuse in H.R. 1. They can't stomach the $9 billion here in discretionary cuts to wasteful spending. There's no upper limit to the amount of taxpayer dollars they'll throw at their government-centered schemes. How about $1 million? Can Democrats articulate a cut to a federal spending in the amount of $1 million? How about in the thousands, like the $500,000 for electric buses in Rwanda, or the $8,000 for promoting vegan food in Zambia that we're cutting now? They can't do it, and that's very unfortunate because it has dire consequences for our nation. The fact is we can't work in a bipartisan fashion to cut federal spending anymore, and that wasn't always the case. Our colleagues are addicted to a tax and spend formula that's been bankrupting our government. But we won't stand idly by. We won't wait on Democrats to take their heads out of the sand or wake up from this woke-induced coma. We're taking bold action at every level and in every facet of the federal government to get our federal spending under control. We'll do it $8,000 at a time when we have to, or $1.6 trillion at a time when we can. We've been given this mandate, and the American people are counting on us, and I reserve.
Lady from North Carolina reserves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague from Georgia for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the rule and the underlying legislation. The 4 separate measures being considered under this rule all have a singular commonality. They serve to put American interests first, where they should always be. All of us can agree that within the global markets and on the global stage, America must always remain competitive and stand tall. Not sometimes, not occasionally, not part of the time, always. From protecting consumer privacy to ushering in a new era of financial innovation, providing for the common defense of the nation, to strengthening the dominance of the American dollar, these pieces of legislation are as consequential as they are vital. This is the caliber of legislation that the American people expect our Republican majority to deliver. Republicans here in the People's House continue to exceed that mark. We've done it many times before, and this week we will do it again. One of the 4 bills being considered under this rule is H.R. 4016, the Department of Defense Appropriations Act of 2026. This legislation provides for appropriations for the DoD for the fiscal year ending on September 30, 2026. Mr. Speaker, you know as well as I do that Congress's first solemn responsibility, one of many, is to provide for the common defense of the nation. In total, H.R. 4016 provides $831.5 billion and adheres to the budgetary top line put forward in the President's FY26 budget request. Consider for a moment the provisions contained within this legislation that uphold Congress's responsibility. $189 billion for active reserve and National Guard military personnel, which is $6.6 billion above the fiscal year 2025 enacted level. A 3.8% increase in basic pay for all military personnel beginning January 1st of next year. Sizable investments in research and development, procurement efforts, operation, and maintenance. Mr. Speaker, I'll be voting yes on the rule and yes on the 4 underlying measures. I urge my colleagues to do the same, and I yield back to my friend from Georgia.
Call on our Chairman Emeritus, Mrs. Foxx, North Carolina, for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Mr. Kawar, EBSA under the Biden-Harris administration engaged in burdensome and inefficient investigations that lasted for years and included repetitive document requests, staff turnover, and delayed findings. Endless and aimless investigations conducted by EBSA wasted precious time and resources, and they ultimately hurt American savers. The committee took note, Mr. Kawar. In September and November 2023, the committee requested a list of all open investigations, the duration of the investigation, the specific purpose of the investigation, and an explanation of all steps taken to close out persisting investigations. In response to these inquiries, DOL provided only general explanations, but not underlying data. In response to the November 2023 request, you provided a briefing to committee staff, but you did not provide any specific information on how long EBSA's stale investigations have been allowed to remain open. Your written testimony states there's a lack of significant evidence of problems that need to be addressed, which would justify the 2 EBSA reform bills that the committee is considering. Yet EBSA has withheld the information that would allow us to gain a full picture of the problems that need to be addressed. In addition, we have proof that EBSA secretly shared information from an investigation under what you are calling a, quote, common interest agreement, but which a court has condemned. Can you assure us that no one in the Biden-Harris DOL, whether career or political appointee, passed confidential information or provided assistance to outside attorneys when there was not a common interest agreement in place?
Thank you for your question, Representative. I mean, I believe this is exactly the subject of an OIG inquiry right now. And I think, importantly, what the IG is looking at is also going to involve, hopefully, the context of any information sharing. There are times when the department has had conversations with plaintiffs' attorneys, for example, in the context of a common interest agreement. It is typically where the department believes that it may be bringing a lawsuit itself and wants to protect any evidentiary privileges. Unlike in FOIA, where disclosure to one is disclosure to all, the benefit of the common interest agreement is that it allows the government to kind of maintain the privilege over its materials.
Throughout my questioning, you've appeared to be very uninterested in the questioning, so I hope that what you're saying to us is something you've carefully thought out. We received information from EBSA over a year after our initial inquiry that a total of 54 cases were still open almost 8 years after they were open. Worse, only 3 of these cases were being actively investigated, meaning the rest were still being held open without resolution. You are not in a position to tell this committee that there is no evidence to support additional transparency and oversight at EBSA. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Foxx.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our witnesses for being here today. And I will ask you, when it's appropriate, I'd like a yes or no answer. Dr. Matos Rodriguez, CUNY's Faculty and Staff Union, the Professional Staff Congress, or PSC, has passed multiple resolutions that support the anti-Semitic BDS movement. Do you support forcing Jewish faculty and staff to be represented by a union that endorses BDS? Yes or no?
Thank you. I have repudiated BDS and have said that there's no place for BDS at the City University of New York.
So you didn't give me an answer, yes or no. So I have to assume it's no. Yes, excuse me. In 2021, the EEOC substantiated a claim by a Jewish CUNY professor that the PSC discriminated against him and other Jewish professors because of their religion. What disciplinary action did you take against those responsible?
And I am, that case of the EEOC, we thought it was entirely inappropriate to discriminate against any member of our community, and that was a matter taken by the EEOC.
And so no disciplinary action. You didn't state a disciplinary action.
Not to my knowledge.
Does the PSC have an anti-Semitism problem? Yes or no?
The PSC does not speak for the City University of New York. We've been clear on our commitment against anti-Semitism and against BDS.
So the president of the PSC personally supports BDS. Do you view this as problematic?
Again, the PSC does not speak for the City University of New York. My understanding also that the last vote that they took, they
So
rejected.
you obviously don't think it's problematic. Thank you. Dr. Groves, after the U.S. Successfully struck Iran's nuclear infrastructure, one of the professors at Georgetown Center for Muslim-Christian Understanding, Jonathan A.C. Brown, said, quote, "I hope Iran does some symbolic strike on a base." Is this person really suited to be educating the next generation of American diplomats?
Thank you for the question. Within minutes of our learning of that tweet, we
the dean contacted Professor Brown. The tweet was removed. We issued a statement condemning the tweet. Professor Brown is no longer chair of his department, and he's on leave, and we're beginning a process of reviewing the case.
So he's been making similarly appalling statements for years, but he has been kept around for years. So you are now investigating and disciplining him from what you've said.
Yes, Congresswoman.
Thank you. Dr. Lyons, several UC Berkeley faculty and staff have made anti-Semitic remarks and justified Palestinian terrorism. In February 2024, history professor and chancellor's chair Usama Makdisi tweeted, "I could have been one of those who broke through the siege on October 7, referencing an article that praised Hamas terrorists and denied reports of sexual violence against Israeli women in 2017. Continuing lecturer Hatim Bazian, co-founder of Students for Justice in Palestine, posted anti-Semitic tweets, including one depicting a stereotypical ultra-Orthodox Jew with the statement, "Mom, look, I is chosen. I can now kill, rape, smuggle organs, and steal the lands of Palestinians. Yah." An October 2023 survey found 85% of Jewish students felt UC Berkeley had not adequately addressed their safety concerns. Understandable given the conduct of some university personnel. Dr. Lyons, do you condone the statements made by these Berkeley employees?
I'm unable to comment on the discipline of an individual faculty or a comment of an individual faculty. What I can say is that you mentioned several different phrases in different events. So separate from the people that you're mentioning, if I heard or saw some of those statements, I would both view them as objectionable, if not reprehensible, and I would also immediately report it, and I would also have empathy for our Jewish community.
So what are you doing to make reforms to your hiring practices to see that you don't bring people like that onto the campus in the future?
Let's make the answer brief. The time has expired.
We use, when hiring faculty, we use academic standards to hire faculty. We don't use ideological conditions to hire faculty.
Well, obviously, your academic standards have been failing.
Minutes to explain his First Amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. School voucher programs have many flaws that can and have been used by bad actors to steal money from the government, trick parents, and rob our children of the quality education needed to succeed. Outright scam schools are not the only problem that school voucher programs create. Others have underqualified teachers and staff. Voucher schools in D.C. and my home state of Florida and across the country are allowed to operate at lower standards than our public schools while steering money away from those same public schools. This means worse education outcomes for all students. There are a lot of things broken within DC's voucher program, so this is my first of 3 amendments on this bill. I'm also glad that several of my colleagues have offered amendments so we can deal with this voucher system's many problems. My first amendment requires schools to be accredited by the list of accrediting agencies in the D.C. School Reform Act of 1995 if they want to receive vouchers. This simply requires D.C.'s voucher schools to meet the same standards as the D.C.'s charter schools. And the 1995 Act specifically names several respected accrediting bodies. In order to qualify for the voucher program, this bill today just says a school must be accredited by, quote, a national or regional accrediting body. What does that even mean? There is no definition in this bill, and the language seems designed to shield these schools against oversight, accountability, and any meaningful qualifications. And what's worse is that the bill allows a school 5 years to get this mysterious accreditation. So they get the money. For 5 years, they don't have to get that accreditation, which means that an entire middle or high school schoolers' classes could move through the schools without having any accreditation of any kind. We can't allow this because DC's voucher schools already underperform across all metrics when compared with the public schools. This was the conclusion of 2 recent Department of Education studies. Reading scores are worse, they had less instructional time, and there was also a reduction in math scores equivalent to those kids in New Orleans after Katrina. Another analysis showed that the average learning loss from attending a DC voucher school compared to going to public school was the same as missing 68 days of class. It's not surprising. Research also shows that the longer a student is in a voucher school, the farther they fall behind. The Department of Education had almost completed a 3rd extensive study on the DC voucher program before the Trump administration abruptly scrapped it last year. I wonder what the evidence was showing. These are frustrating, but they're not surprising facts, and they mimic what we see across the entire nation. Poorly regulated vouchers are a tax dollar wasted, and a kid's future, college, trade school, or employment endangered. For DC's children, families, and future, I ask my colleagues to support this common sense amendment to make sure that none of the district's children are left behind in subpar voucher schools. It is making the standards the same with the public schools, the charter schools, and these voucher schools. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I recognize Dr. Foxx.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to go back to what my comment to you earlier was, that 95% of the children participating in the DC scholarship program are African American or Hispanic. But they do remarkably better with the scholarships than and in the schools that they attend than students do in the, quote, regular public schools in D.C. And the average family income is less than $27,000 a year. So giving a scholarship to these families and the students is really a lifeline to a better education. The D.C. schools have been known for years to be totally inadequate. And what this amendment does is it would limit the number of qualifying schools and weaken the program. Yes, the students would have access to schools that are not currently accredited, but they have the opportunity to work on accreditation. But, Mr. Chairman, the D.C. children in the failing school that are going to failing schools that are already accredited. So this makes no sense. Would you rather go to have a scholarship that'll let you go to a school that is performing well, whether it's accredited currently or not, or go to a failing schools and be limited in your educational opportunity? It would reduce access to high-performing schools. You do not have to be accredited to be a high-performing school in any city, and especially not in D.C. So I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, which is simply another attempt to undermine the scholarship program that has worked so successfully in this city. I just don't understand, and neither do most of the people in this country, why there is an attempt to force particularly minority students to stay in the failing schools, unless it is because these people simply support the unions, not the children. Our goal, those of us who support the Opportunity Scholarships, is we support high-quality education for these students. We're not victims of the unions. And so this is a terrible amendment. It needs to be voted down. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Any other members seek recognition? Ms. Crockett?
Thank you so much. I support this common sense amendment by Congressman Frost, and I thank him for offering it. Students in the DC voucher program should be protected from unaccredited schools. We have seen three consistent things about the voucher program since Republicans created it 20 years ago. The program has failed to improve academic achievement as measured by reading and math scores. Republicans continue to weaken the evaluation requirements for the program, and Republicans continue to allow unaccredited schools to participate in the program. The bill would allow schools first participating in the program after enactment of the bill 5 years. Let me repeat that. 5 years to become accredited. That is ridiculously weak when it comes to standards. Accreditation helps ensure that schools provide a high-quality education. The federal government requires colleges and universities to be accredited to receive federal funds. It is even more important that schools participating in federally funded DC voucher programs, which educate students during key developmental years, also be accredited. I asked unanimous consent to enter into the record a Washington Post investigation of the program titled "Quality Controls Lacking for DC Schools Accepting Federal Vouchers."
Without objection to order.
Now let me go on and deal with this because y'all want to talk about my education because MAGA loves to talk about my education. Let me tell you something. I got it. I got degrees, okay? I can count them off for you if you want me to, and I am proud of that. But let me tell you, it was no thanks to any Republicans that I got my education. My mom, regardless of what tropes y'all might like to put out there about black folk or government workers, let me be clear, my mom has been a federal government worker my entire life. She has worked hard for this federal government, regardless of all the nonsense and the terrible things you say about federal government employees, and somehow she managed to raise me. But she still wasn't getting paid her due like most of us that work for the federal government. So what did my mom do? My mom worked multiple jobs. I know that there are tropes out there that act like black folk are the ones that are always looking out for a handout. But my mom worked multiple jobs to make sure that she could pay to send me to private school. So yes, I went to private school. I went to private school from 7th grade all the way through high school, and then I earned a scholarship to attend college at a private school, the same one that Amy Coney Barrett attended. Yes, we both attended Rhodes College, and then I earned another scholarship so that I could go to law school. Let me tell you something, my academic success, it started in public school. Public school was my foundation. So pre-K through 6, yes, I believe in pre-K, I was in public school. Unfortunately, it was too dangerous for me to go and matriculate through the junior high as well as the high school. In addition to the fact that when it came to the standardized tests, I typically was at the top of the standardized tests in the state, and so my mom wanted to challenge me to the best of her ability. So that is what she did. She did not look to the federal government and say, I've decided I want to send my child to a private school, so therefore the federal government needs to give me this money, instead of making it an inequitable situation for other students that are literally not in the same situation. Yes, I got accepted to private school because my parents worked with me even when I got out of public school, because they had that luxury of being able to do that, and because both of my parents happened to be college educated and they could help me to do my work. But nevertheless, regardless of my education, because I've done both, I can actually be an advocate, and I understand the difference. And I do believe in the importance of having a sound public education. And maybe my mom would not have had to work so many jobs if there had not been people siphoning money out of our public schools to the extent that she felt like they were not going to be able to challenge me, her gifted child, as I was continuing to grow. So all we're saying is, if you're gonna give out $20-something thousand to $21,000 as it relates to these 1,400 students per child, then give out the same $21,000 for the students that are in public school. That's it. We're looking for equity, something that y'all don't like. I know it's a bad word, but we're looking for equity. And I know that the gentle lady from North Carolina wants to brag about how many black and brown children. I will remind her, one of the reasons the president has a problem with the city of DC right now is because it's black and brown. That's what it is. I mean, it would be odd if like the vast majority of the people that are taking advantage are not black and brown. That's the city. Okay, I yield.
All right.
Now we go to Chairwoman Emeritus Foxx from North Carolina for questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that, and I appreciate our witnesses being here today. I know this is a very tough issue for you all to be dealing with, especially Ms. Mann and Mr. Rubenstein, because there's so much involved with this, so I really appreciate your being here. Ms. Mann, your written testimony discusses how Jewish employees are afraid to speak up about the toxic workplace the unions created. Why do you believe they're afraid to speak up?
I believe they're afraid to speak up because they have already experienced the feeling of being ostracized. We never considered ourselves as a separate group in the office, but we've essentially been pushed into our own little Jewish ghetto where we can only discuss matters of the office with each other. We don't feel that the union has our back. And in fact, before this last strike, many of my Jewish colleagues who had not yet obtained religious objector status felt that the union was pressuring them to go on strike because their primary goal was not increasing our wages or getting us better health care. It was fighting the NILAG management policy that posters not be posted in the office about anything related to this conflict. They argued, again, that they have the right to free speech in the office, and the union has misled them because there is no right to free speech in a private workplace. The union has told them that the poster policy is an egregious, quote, an egregious infringement on our members' speech and a violation of labor law, unquote.
What you're talking about sounds so much like what happened in Germany a long time ago. And we've all said, never again. This kind of thing can never happen again. Mr. Rubenstein, your written testimony includes exhibits of many emails documenting how the union and Cornell have tried to enforce the forced dues clause in the collective bargaining agreement. Could you discuss whether the union has communicated to graduate students clearly and honestly what their rights and obligations are with respect to the union?
It has not. We have the right to object to union dues on religious, ethical, or moral grounds, and yet the union has consistently represented that all graduate students are forced to pay dues or agency fees to the union, negating that third option.
So what do you think could be done to make sure that people in unionized workplaces like yours know their rights?
Well, the first answer to that is that one should not be forced to go through a burdensome and time-consuming exemption procedure in order not to fund a union that one does not wish to support. Union dues should be voluntary. But while Cornell is locked into a contract with forced dues, the university should make clear that all exemptions will be recognized, that individuals do not need to beg for the union's permission, with the union being given free rein to obstruct, ignore, or deny these exemptions. The university can recognize them.
Mr. Taubman, Mr. Rubenstein's written testimony and what he has said verbally discuss receiving an intrusive questionnaire from the union, which he's alluding to again, when he tried to obtain a religious accommodation. What responses have your clients at other workplaces received when they invoked their rights under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act?
The first response that the UE union gave my clients at MIT who were Jewish was to write them a letter saying, Jews can't object to our union because our founder was Jewish. So they told these people that they know more about their Judaism and their religious beliefs than they do. Since that time, the union has been sending these invasive questionnaires, and this has happened at Stanford, this has happened at Cornell, this has happened at other schools. They try to conduct a little mini inquisition to harass and delay and prevent these people from exercising their religious liberties under Title VII.
Thank you. And I think the term you used earlier about torture is certainly very appropriate. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to insert in the record an article from the Wall Street Journal August 29, Stanford's Graduate Student Union trial.
I'm going to hand it off first here to the indomitable Dr. Virginia Foxx. She is the chairwoman of our House Rules Committee. We call her the Iron Lady of the House. I know she has a lot to say about Democrats' obstruction. She's going to lay out some of the indisputable facts of this government shutdown. Dr. Foxx?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks for your continued work in calling attention to the facts. You remain consistent and concise in explaining to the American people that the Democrats have shut down the government. And thank you to the members of our leadership team and members of the entire conference who've been equally as vocal and engaged. I've listened to the arguments the Democrats have been making since they shut down the government, and I cannot help but shake my head in utter disgust every time. They continue to lie like a rug. They're trying desperately to change the conversation and deflect because they know they're in the wrong and they've dug themselves into a deep, deep hole. We've now entered day 14 of their government shutdown, and as the days go on, more Americans are feeling the pain. Make no mistake about it, this is real pain being inflicted upon real people. Today, 400,000 federal workers will receive partial paychecks. The Speaker called attention to this last week. This will be the last paycheck that these federal workers receive until Democrats grow a spine and reopen the federal government. Meanwhile, you have Chuck Schumer in the Senate who said in a recent interview, quote, "Every day gets better for us," end quote. His statement is as callous as it is tone deaf, and it reveals to everyone how the Democrats continue to use hardworking Americans as pawns in their own grotesque political game. I'll close with a quick observation. As the Speaker said previously, there's a real split screen here in Washington that the American people are watching. While Republicans are the ones who have voted and are continuing to vote to reopen the government, Democrats have treated their own shutdown as one big attention-getting activity. They've taken shutdown selfies, posted weird videos of themselves doing everything except working, and they even hosted a live stream that failed to gain any traction whatsoever. How embarrassing. These are not serious people. They continue to play a dangerous game with the livelihoods of Americans. And contrary to what Democrats believe, every day of this shutdown does not get any better for the American people. That's a stone cold fact. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.